In this video, I'm going to share with you a brief introduction to a top-of-the-line .NET Rapid Application Framework to help you to boost your productivity and save time on delivering your next .NET web application. Keep in mind, this is going to be a super simple introduction video where you're going to get a clear idea if this is right for you. Hey, this is Eduardo Santana here. A bit about myself. I've been doing software development for many years now. And also as a professor, I get to see how many students struggle to create their new web applications. I get to see new programmers trying to put so much time creating repetitive code over and over again that you have to do every time you do a new application. And because of this, I wanted to create a series of videos that will give you a clear path for creating your new .NET application. First, we're going to be talking about who is this framework for? Does it work for you? And secondly, we're going to be talking about some of the most important time-saving features that this framework is offering you. Moving on, let's go to dive into what is it, ASP.NET Boilerplate. So ASP.NET Boilerplate is really a well-documented application framework, open source application framework, that it's going to be providing you a strong architectural model based on domain-driven design, or DDD. Of course, doing the best practices of object-oriented programming. Okay, moving on, let's have a quick look on Google. What is this framework about? If I do a quick search on the internet, I will find how popular it is on the internet. Let's go to Google Chrome. And if I type ASP.NET Boilerplate, I will find right away that get the website, the official website with documentations, okay? And we can see down there, we have more documentation information here. Hey, we can see on the top, hey, ASP.NET Boilerplate is a modern architecture, is a general purpose application framework, especially designed for new modern web applications, okay? Okay, so see, migrating from ASP.NET Boilerplate to ABP framework, which ABP is the second version. We are going to be talking about the version 1, okay? So here we can see a video of the Lee Richardson. Yeah, very good videos that Lee Richardson creates. And we have as well another video here from Lee Richardson and another video here from Lee Richardson. Okay, I'm going to be posting some of those videos in the video description, so don't worry about getting the URLs here. I'm going to go back to the presentation now. Let's talk about who is this framework for. This framework is for someone who is looking for a rapid application development, for someone who is well familiar with C# programming language. And we can see right away the version 8 is using .NET 7 and is using Entity Framework 7. Very important to mention that we all know how popular, how powerful it is, the Entity Framework, right? And very important to mention that Entity Framework is capable of handling different databases. So you can work with the Entity Framework, but just use, let's say, SQL Server, but also you can use Microsoft Azure, SQLite, MemoriDB, Cosmos DB, PostgreSQL, capable this Entity Framework. So let's talk more about what is this for, okay? So another thing is you are if you, let's say you have worked in the past with AutoMapper 12, okay? So this framework, probably you haven't worked with the version 12 of AutoMapper, but let's say you have worked with AutoMapper before, this framework is gonna give it to you out of the box, configure for any entity that you create. You're gonna have got the latest version, AutoMapper 12 for automatic DTO mappings. A quick side note is that ASP Boilerplate a couple of years back was migrated away from Castle Windsor as a dependency ingestion framework. So right now, Castle Windsor is no longer part of ASP.NET Boilerplate. very important to mention. Some of you might have known ASP.NET Boilerplate a long time ago when it was using Castle Windsor. It is following domain-driven design and also following only best practices for object-oriented design principles, okay? And of course, using solid principles as well. Moving on, let's talk about features for the backend. So features for the backend. One of the most important features is that you will get to save time a lot on repetitive tasks that you have to do on a normal application. For me, in my specific example, I find the most relevant and most useful is getting the iRepository task. You will get the example of that one, but once you create a new entity, you can do iRepository tags, and you will get the generic repository out of the box for you. Another time-saving feature is that you will get authorization and authentication by default out of the box for you, which means, for example, you don't have to create a login page, you don't have to create a user management page, and you don't have to create tenant management pages, because all of those they are creating for you, and the APIs and pages, they are there for you, so you can consume and change, update as you wish. Moving on, we have as well multi-tenancy. Hey, many of those applications that you will create is using some kind of multi-tenancy. For example, when it comes to one customer using or getting access to his own data, this is the most basic example of a multi-tenancy. And it's going to give it to you out of the box for you. And of course, you can disable the multi-tenancy out of the box if you want, just with a single flag. And another thing that you will get is filters. Entity framework filter to separate the tenant information on every request to the database. Another thing that you will get is caching service out of the box for you. So you can connect this application to Redis and it will be seamless, okay? It's just really plug and play. You can connect your Redis instance, but out of the box, it's in-memory caching service, but you can swap it out to use Redis if you want. Another helpful thing that you get with the framework is data filters out of the box. Data filters, like you get soft delete and tenanted data out of the box. And of course, another very helpful feature is the multi-language out of the box for you. Finally, we will get as well audit logging, right? Well, the audit logging, you will get the user information, browser, IP, service, method, and every time that you hit your application with a new HTTP request, you're gonna be stored in audit logging service that you will get a table with this information in the database. In conclusion, guys, this framework will give you many features that will help you to create a new maintainable application with ease. So moving on, let's talk about the example of the documentation for this one. So one example of the documentation is if we click here, okay, then we have the documentation page. Let's say here we have an example of a quick example with a task entity model, okay? So let's say here we have a task application service that is inheriting from application service that this class is given to you, and iTask service, okay? And we have, let's say, the thing that we mentioned before, the generic repository that you can create and instantiate using the dependency injection. You're gonna get a new instance of the task repository. And very important here, we have the declarative permissions. For example, we have ABP authorize and my permissions, and then right there, really quick, that you can get there, okay? And moving on, I would skip this example for a second, but moving on, for more features that you will get on this framework, okay? So for example, we have the dependency injection, the repository, the authorization, validation, audit logging, unit of work, section handling, logging, localization, auto mapping, dynamic API layer, dynamic JavaScript Ajax proxy, and so on and so forth. You can see that it's a ton of information here. I invite you to go slow one by one and get to know. Here in this series of videos, we're gonna get you started. Let's say you wanna know more about the repository feature, okay? So you click here, the repository, and then it's gonna give you more, hey, generic repositories, right? And we have the person information. So it's gonna give you an example of how you can use the iRepository interface with your own entity class. So going back to presentation, so let me move on to the next slide here. So this is gonna be all for this video. I just want to conclude it here and invite you to go and explore the documentation page. If you find value in this video, please give it a thumbs up. Also, subscribe if you want to see the coming videos. For example, I'm going to be creating a video for the front end and introduction features, and we're going to do a hands-on backend using Postgres, Swagger, and Entity Framework, and we're going to do a hands-on front-end example using Angular and a student entity as well. And we're going to finally create an interesting video that's going to be generating some code for you, taking your entity as an input, and then this is going to be generating the backend code and the front-end code. So I'm going to be posting all of this information in the video description. Stay tuned and see you next.